That was not a smattering, by the way, and that was the Cowboys last night after a weekend that saw more than 200 NFL players kneeling for protesting the national anthem. Now, Sunday Night Football saw its lowest ratings in more than a decade. Listen, football's high, but they're off about 8 to 10%. And the debate over patriotism and politics seems to be dividing the country, and that's why we're here. We have a great panel of our parents, business owners, former athletes, and professors together to hash this thing out unscripted and from the heart. We're going to focus on all 3 hours. We'll do one of these segments, and we're going to focus on 4 people at a time. So don't get worried if you don't say anything now. We're going to get to you soon. First off, I want to start with Burgess Owens, former NFL player with the Raiders and Jets. Burgess, first off, you watched that last night. You stood during the national anthem through your playing days. Do you like the way Dallas handled it? Knee before the anthem, stand arm in arm during the anthem.
If they're going to make a message, that's the best way to do it at this point. At the end of the day, it's all about the flags, all about hope in our country, and that's what the flag is always represented. So whatever they can do not to disrespect the flag, then and still get the message out, then I'm okay with.
Emily, you heard there was more than a smattering of boos. The fans are divided from the players in many respects. And Emily Compagno is a former NFL cheerleader, former federal attorney, former criminal defense attorney, but most important, you're here. Emily, your thoughts on that?
I agree with Burgess that I think at this point unification is the most important message. And remember that owners have the option of terminating players if their conduct is deemed detrimental. So I think as this conversation progresses and we see that there's a level of acrimony, it might get to that level.
Kyle Reyes is CEO and silent partner with the Silent Partner Marketing Group. And most importantly, Kyle, you're a dad. Mm-hmm. A lot of dads are turning around, not showing up. One actually concession worker left in the middle of the game after the players took a knee. Have you given second thoughts until the NFL can sort this out about going to a game?
Of course. I mean, Americans don't want politics shoved down their throat in football. They want beer and wings shoved down their throat. And to see this divisive nature that's happening right now with the NFL, people are very polarized. You see it all over social media. People are sick and tired of having this shoved down their throats and feel disrespected.
Sean Parnell, you are actually a former teammate, but a military teammate, a Green Beret teammate of Alejandro Villanueva, who was a Pittsburgh Steel, who came out of the tunnel and sang the national and put his hand over his heart for the national anthem. However, he now regrets doing that. Do you believe you can separate the message from the military if you sit out the national anthem?
No, I mean, I don't think that you can take a knee for the national anthem and say that you support the military at the same time. I think it's wrong, and I think that the whole message of the protest and what it was initially founded upon is lost. And you know, Donald Trump does what he does best, and he spoke to the hearts of what the vast majority of Americans feel, and that people that play a game for a living in this country and make millions of dollars of doing so should, regardless of what they believe, stand up and thank God that they live in this country that allows them to do that.
So the President of the United States says this is not about race, it's about respecting the anthem. The players say this is not about the anthem, it's not about the country, this is about race. Where do you stand?
About a race?
Yeah.
I don't think it's, well, I think there are issues about race, and it's not about, I don't think necessarily kneeling or standing. There are deeper issues, systematic inequality and injustices that are happening every day, and I think that's the real issue.
Chris, you're Chris,
Caleb.
right?
No, sir.
Caleb, excuse me. So Caleb is a retired U.S. Army lieutenant, former NFL linebacker for the Detroit Lions. So you see a racial inequity in this country, and you like what the players are doing?
I don't necessarily say I like what the players are doing, but I like that they're exercising their constitutional right in taking a knee. So it's not that I actually agree with one side or the other, because I don't think it's at the end of the day about taking a knee or about standing. It's about understanding what America represents. And my teammate, Ali Villanueva, stood with his hand over his heart, and he honored what America meant to him. And equally so, the people who are actually protesting, they're just protesting, hoping that those same ideals are equal for everyone.
Deneen, if you were able to get the message out differently, is sports the right forum? If you don't make it the anthem, if you make it something else, but do talk about some racial inequity in this country, is that a better way to do it?
I disagree with the fact that they're doing it on the football field, Brian, because there is a time and a place for these players to protest. Of course, they have that right to do so, but what they are doing is alienating thousands, if not millions, of their consumers, the fans who want to just have fun, just as the gentleman just mentioned, have a good time with their family and their friends, but instead we're being lectured by individuals with their message that they should be doing on their time and their dime, not the Americans.
Wendy Osefo is a PhD professor and political commentator. Wendy, how have you seen this whole thing evolve from Colin Kaepernick taking a seat to maybe 12 players following him to now 200? Are you happy the way this is trending?
I am happy the way it's trending, because what we have to know is that politics and sports has been intrinsically woven over time. Whether we look at Juan Carlos and Tommy Smith in the 1968 Olympics putting their fist up, Muhammad Ali saying he won't go into a draft, or even the way Jackie Robinson integrated the MLB. This is not something new. This is just transformed into Colin Kaepernick and others. And we have to be very clear here. They're not protesting the flag. What they're protesting is social injustice, and that's what's important.
See, Wendy, that would be very interesting, and that could be 100% true, but you cannot separate people's image of taking a knee in front of the flag with, I'm not protesting the flag. Don't you see that image?
No, I don't, because we can walk and chew gum at the same time. It's not a binary decision. You can protest the flag, and in the other respect, you can say, actually, no, we're not protesting the flag. We're protesting social injustice. So it's not one or the other.
That's fundamental. You just went over the debate. So a show of hands right now, how many people think you can separate the method of protest with what they're protesting? How many people, by show of hands, yes, I can separate the kneeling from the lack of patriotism? So 3 of you. How many can't? How many would be? How many, show of hands, think there is a racial issue in this country and needs to be addressed? Everybody.
Racism. Listen, we're not a perfect country. You have clowns out there that are racist, but it is not blanket across the country. 70% of these players are black players. They're making millions of dollars. Are you going to tell me that there's institutional racism in the NFL? These guys would not have this opportunity if that was the case.
And you see, that's problematic for us to say that, right? And the reason I say that is because recently we just saw a player who went to the Mayweather fight and he was thrown on the floor because he was just seen as a black man. They didn't know he was an NFL player. We cannot say just because people are okay in society, like myself, I'm a professor, right, I do not face racial inequities, because I do.
I don't know details of the Michael Bennett story. He's a Seattle defensive lineman. Real quick, David.
Well, this is where the facts actually matter. The fact is that in this room, the police asked everybody to stay where they were so they could sort out what had happened. He ran. When the police give you that lawful order and you disobey it, that's what happened. So let's stay on the facts on this. By the way, if these players really want to protest, as Colin Kaepernick started, the police and the injustice and the shooting of blacks by police officers, then turn around from the flag and protect the police who stand on the sidelines behind you and protest them. They don't have that. This has gone beyond just what it was originally supposed to be. If they really want to have the guts, turn around and protest these police who protect the parking lots, the stadium, their lives on a daily basis.
All right, we're going to have to stop right there, but we have 2 more hours to go after this. There's no wrong answer. We just want your answers. Thanks so much, and stay tuned.
He attacks black athletes, as he did, starting with his rally in Alabama, continued on Twitter, and he attacks them for protesting peacefully for equality, for standing up for what they believe. And he does it once again to dog whistle to his base and to try to detract attention from other things that are going on. But it's quite telling that he is willing to attack black athletes. He never says anything of an insulting manner toward white supremacists or neo-Nazis or Ku Klux Klanners or Vladimir Putin, right?
Well, I had a whole list of questions for this panel, but during that soundbite of Hillary Clinton, you're all making your own little comments under your breath. So I think maybe we'll just stick with this first. Let me talk to you, Wendy. This is Wendy Osefo. She's a professor, a liberal political commentator. Let me ask you first what you think of Hillary Clinton's comments. She's saying it is about race. Do you agree, and why?
Well, Hillary is now a private citizen, so she has the right to her opinions. However, we have to look at the facts. The facts are Donald Trump has only attacked black athletes. We have, Dale Earnhardt, who has come out and said, you know what, it's okay to take a knee. We also have Tom Brady, who has also said, you know what, it's okay to protest. So we, again, have to continue to look at the facts. And what is clear here is that there is this attack. And then on top of that, this is really about the flag. There's also the Confederate flag, which has also been divisive, and he has not made comments about that. So let's start having that discourse and that conversation.
All right, Lisa, I'm watching you and your reaction. You're disagreeing with her. Lisa Giovinazzo, she's a trial attorney and a mother. Lisa, why are you shaking your head?
Well, first of all, the one thing that we all do as Americans is we stand united during the anthem. So in that regard, I don't know how anybody could support not standing during the anthem. As far as the comments that we're seeing and if it's racial and if it's not, I think honestly, taking a knee, maybe that isn't enough for these players, and maybe that forum isn't the right forum. Maybe they should go beyond taking a knee and take a stand and vocally tell the public what it is that they're supporting and what it is that they're specifically protesting. Maybe they can go beyond that. Maybe they can raise awareness in a different way. But to take the forum in a political setting in a public forum, and as a mother, I have a 10-year-old. I go to the Jets games. Yes, season ticket, Jets ticket holder.
Will you continue to go to the games?
I will continue to go to the games, but I don't appreciate having to have a political conversation with my child at a game. I think it's the wrong forum. I think that we have to be more respectful of who we are as Americans. And the NFL is living the American dream because of what has come before them.
Let me see. Show of hands of the people that think it's okay to take a knee in the middle of the anthem. Okay, we have 3 of you that think it's fine. What about those who say it's okay to take a knee as long as it's not during the anthem? Anyone agree? You agree? Okay, a few of you. Unless they're taking a water break. Okay.
I think that's what's most important. I think that people I don't think these protests are wrong. I just think they're misguided.
Okay.
I think that the most important thing to remember here is that the national anthem is symbolic of the fact that we as Americans have the opportunity to protest. So a protest during the national anthem is a protest against the very thing that allows you to protest in the first place. It is a misguided protest. I actually agree with some of the positions some of these people are taking, and I would gladly share their sentiments. Not during the national anthem. It is misguided.
All right, this is Chris Valletta talking. He's former NFL player and author of Teamworks, played for the Titans, the Saints, and the Bucks. Now, Caleb also played in the NFL, retired U.S. Army lieutenant, former linebacker for the NFL for the Lions. Now, the NFL picks all of these different free speech points. You can't honor breast cancer. You can't honor 9/11. You can't honor those Dallas police officers. Is there a double standard here?
Absolutely. And I think that this was a strategic move from the commissioner. And it's kind of a genius move because now it diverts all the attention away from the real issues, being the CTE issues, domestic violence, sexual abuse. We're not talking about those things anymore. So there is a double standard in that regard. But I think it was also a strategic move from the commissioner.
Okay, I want to go to Emily behind you. Emily Compagno. She's a former NFL cheerleader, former federal attorney, and former criminal defense attorney. Emily, should the government and should taxpayers fund football, the NFL football?
No, I don't believe the government should. And remember that this is a workplace. And so I wouldn't presume to tell a professional athlete that they cannot use their platform to be part of a larger conversation. But as the point was addressed earlier, I believe that specificity is what is most important. And symbolic gestures that are so divisive are really causing this acrimony that ultimately owners can terminate players for doing anything that's injurious to the league or to the franchise. Athletes that are engaging in communities and really taking specific stances and doing specific things enables us as the entertained to understand what things that they are discussing and what viewpoints that they hold dear. That's the most important thing to me.
Okay, let's go to the lady sitting next to you. This is Dr. Jeannie Zaino. She's a political science professor and a mother. What do you think about this, Jeannie?
Well, as a political science professor, I have to say we haven't talked yet about the political end of this, really. You started with this clip of Hillary Clinton using terms like dog whistle, and I call out the president on the same kind of language. I do think there are points on both sides. My struggle is I'm teaching students, young people, and I have young children, and I want them to learn how to be disagreeable with an agreeable and in a way that is collegial. We need to be able to talk about things. So as opposed to the president coming out and using terms that I can't even repeat on TV, why doesn't he engage in a conversation and lead by example? Hillary Clinton, the same thing. thing. We need to elevate the political discussion in this country. He has a fair point. He disagrees with this. He's the commander-in-chief. He has every right to say it. But say it in a different way, and say it in a way that allows us all to engage in a conversation about important issues and not bring us down to this level. And that, to me, is what is so frustrating, because that's what we're trying to teach our children. And I agree, it's difficult. You don't want to go to a sports game and engage in a political discussion with young men.
We go to sports games to
have
get away from
fun.
politics. I know. All right, Kisha Hebben, she's sitting on the front row. She's an attorney and she's a mom. I want to hear what you think about this, because when I woke up this morning and I saw that Jerry Jones and his team, that they were kneeling down, but then they stood up when that flag was unfurled. I thought, okay, I get that. You want to protest. You want to show that your team is united. It's not about blacks. It's not about whites. It's not about who you voted for, which I thought was a little refreshing. How did you feel about it?
Well, I agree with you, and I feel that these actions are actually a very effective way for African Americans to be heard. I'd rather this happen instead of people out in the streets rioting or looting. I think they're just expressing their feelings, and just because you're paid millions of dollars as an athlete doesn't mean you can't exercise your constitutional right to freedom of expression. And I think that it's effective because look at how much attention this has received from the media, from the government, and I think our president does not have the right to tell these private entities to fire someone just for exercising their constitutional right.
Okay.
Yes, he does.
No, he doesn't. No,
Sean.
Look, does any...
Let me introduce you. This is
Sure.
Sean Parnell. He's a retired U.S. Army Ranger, and he was in the same battalion as Ali Villanueva, the guy who walked out, the Steelers player who walked out in the tunnel.
Yeah, I was a company commander when he was coming in as a young lieutenant, and he was so big. We're like, we can't send this guy to Afghanistan. He can't fit in the trucks. But then he went to Afghanistan, and he was...
God bless him.
Yeah, seriously, three deployments. He's an amazing guy, and I think he was an inspiration to anybody that loves the
And I
country.
think it's being
sitting up
taken
there.
out of context. He said that he did.
Sure,
he
yeah.
does regret coming out, but then he said it's not that he regrets standing up for the flag. Of course, he just regrets that he wasn't unified with the team. He thought they were coming out behind him, and they were 20 feet away from him.
Right. I think that, that is Villanueva doing what he's always done in putting the team before himself, and I applaud him for that. But let me ask you, what is this protest all about? It was first about racial inequality, and then it was about police brutality, and now what? It's NFL players united against. No, but it is. They are all protesting, locking arms, protesting Donald Trump.
But
That is,
clearly
I
that's
think,
the problem. And instead of focusing on, they're taking a knee, we need to look at how do we address these problems. African Americans in the community want to be heard. There's racial injustice going on.
You address it by raising, you doing things. There are other ways to address these problems.
But we're not being heard.
JJ Watt just raised $37 million for hurricane relief. Marshawn Lynch does amazing things in his community. There are things you can do outside of taking a knee that will be much more of a legacy building for these athletes whose careers will be over by the time they're 27.
Burgess, I didn't get to you. Kyle, I didn't get to you. David, my friend David, I didn't get to you. And my friend Deneen, I didn't get to you. But we have this panel. Y'all are coming back up with Steve, so we'll make sure we get your views out there as well.
Continuing now with our live town hall panel. We've got a dozen people from all walks of life joining us right now. Let me ask you this, a series of questions, show of hands. According to the NFL Game Operations Manual, all players must be on the sidelines for the national anthem. They've got to be standing up. They've got to be looking in the direction of the flag and whoever is singing. If you don't, you're subject to a fine. Who thinks going forward, if people don't do that, they should be fined in the NFL? Who thinks they should be fined? All right, most of you. Who does not think they should be fined? All right, Professor, why not?
Because this is bigger than these guidelines. And let's be clear here. I do not think that this one sole issue is the only issue that the NFL should back. I also think they should allow other issues to come into the mix, because we cannot separate the sportsmen from major social injustices. And that's what we're trying to do here.
But what is getting accomplished by taking a knee?
And I think us having this town hall is what's getting accomplished. And I think we need to take this type of conversation on a national level for us to continue to talk about issues of social injustice, issues of racism, and move that forward.
Deneen, you're right behind her. What do you think?
This whole issue could have been avoided. You just mentioned the conduct code that the NFL has. Roger Goodell has failed the NFL, has failed the consumers who spend thousands of dollars to buy tickets, to seat licenses, to go to the games and have fun. What they're going to realize, Roger Goodell, the owners, the players, the coaches, they need us. We don't need them. So we'll see what will happen as this continues. But if they continue this, there's a Fox and Friends poll, 94% of Americans are opposed of what the NFL is doing.
There's an important way in the way you started this segment. You mentioned the rules that your employer has set.
Right.
And the professor just said, well, there's a bigger issue than those rules if you choose not to follow them. They're actually protesting where this started, the police claiming they didn't follow the rules. So who gets to choose which set of rules you get to follow? The police have to follow the rules. That's what they're calling for. But she's saying that the NFL players don't have to follow the rules. Your employer sets them. I work for Fox. Fox has rules. If I don't follow them, Fox can fire me.
Absolutely. And to keep in mind, one thing about the Dallas Cowboys is the fact that it was within the last year where they actually asked the NFL to honor our fallen policemen who were ambushed by that guy down in Dallas. We want to wear a little emblem. And the NFL said no. So, you know, they followed that.
That's the main problem, is that there is no consistency in their policy regarding this. The
NFL has made this worse. Can I see?
That's right.
Can I see the hands?
Yes.
Who thinks the NFL is the big villain here?
I think the president made it worse by his
Absolutely.
And one thing that we need to point out while we're talking about rules, the Department of Defense paid the NFL to have these athletes stand for the anthem and out on the field. For years ago, this wasn't even required. They stayed in the locker room.
Look, I think President spoke to the
right back here, Burgess.
I love to put this in context, guys. I grew up in Tallahassee, Florida, segregated South, Jim Crow. And a lot of
You played in the NFL,
I played in the NFL. A lot of people don't realize that through the 40s, 50s, and 60s, the black community, with all that stuff, led our country in the growth of our middle class. We led our country in terms of men committed to marriage. We led our country in terms of the percentage of entrepreneurs. We were doing the things we needed to do because we believed in that flag. And I remember in 7th grade, walking to school early, putting the flag up and bringing it down, and knowing that if it ever touched the ground, it would be desecrated. Because I had a dad who taught me to be proud of that flag. And every defeat I've gone through life, I've always said, in this country, I can get back up again. This is one place I can do it again.
Right here in the front row, also from the NFL, Chris Valletta.
You know, thank God we live in this country, because there was a woman who was publicly executed in North Korea, and her crime was watching a Hollywood movie. Okay, that's the reality, and thank God we don't have those issues in this country, and by God's grace, we never will. I think what's important to remember is that the national anthem is representing the fact that we live in this type of country. That moment, those seconds, however long it takes to sing that anthem, is the time when all of us should stand shoulder to shoulder, hand on heart, and proclaiming the fact that we live in a free society that affords us the right to protest whatever we want. And I happen to agree. I happen to feel that the protests are valid. They are, as I said, just misguided. You have to do it elsewhere. The anthem is not the place to do it. And Steve, I agree. I think the NFL is all disjointed here in terms of them not creating policies and rules.
Well, let's not talk about the NFL. Let's talk about the NHL, National Hockey League, for a moment. There was a coach who came out last year and said, anybody who's going to sit for the national anthem is going to sit for the whole game. Who thinks the NFL could take a lesson from the NHL?
Let's go Rangers. You know, at the end of the day, the consumers are going to vote with their wallets. They're not going to go to games. They're not going to purchase products. Right. But advertisers are going to vote with tens of millions of dollars. When we start moving money out of the advertising arena and we start making our own statement on the impact of the lack of patriotism here in the NFL or NHL.
Right next to you is the professor.
Can we just say, though, that the flag affords us the opportunity to protest? Now, I agree with Deneen and David. If I'm working for an employer, they have a right to set the rules. If they don't want me to kneel, I can't kneel. But beyond that, the idea that you can't protest the flag, that's the very thing that it stands for. You can't desecrate it, but you can protest. That's what we're allowed to do.
Let me ask you this. We know that the protests have been going on for over a year, but it was gigantic this weekend, right? How many think it was because of Donald Trump who made this a big issue? All right, so, I mean, we're all together on this. Go ahead.
That you should be fired. Look, you're wait, hang on 1 second. Hold on.
He did at the end.
If you're an employee, I made this comment earlier. If you go into a Starbucks and right before you order your latte, the person behind the counter starts to spat off their political opinions and views, they could be subject to termination. You're an employee of a business. I played in the NFL. Believe me, they make it clear that you're an employee. Right. You should be subject to rules. You know, the rules are gray, and that's the problem.
The thing about the protests on Sunday, which so many people lost this, was the fact that Sunday was National Gold Star Mother Day. And one Gold Star mother was in attendance. And Sean, I think you know this story. You're nodding your head. And she saw somebody taking a knee, and she took a breath, and she goes, They're protesting the flag, the same flag that my son came back in a coffin in.
By the way, there's a lack of understanding of history, and I want to give everyone watching an example. In the game in the UK, the NFL players stood for God Save the Queen. British colonial adventurism and slavery under British colonies was the biggest, call it, beneficiary of that. Then they knelt, or they didn't stand for the country that reversed the course of racism, the United States of America. Learn your history is my point. Understand the context of what you're protesting.
Listen, this has been a great...
Trump disrespected the Gold Star family if we're talking about history, and also about history. When Colin Kaepernick asked what he should do to protest, a military person told him to take a knee and don't sit. So let's talk about that history.
Professor Colin Kaepernick got it started. You're absolutely right.